This is the Let's Go Win podcast with your host, J.M. Ryerson.
What is happening, you guys? Welcome to a Tuesday tune-up. I'm J.M. Ryerson, and I am just doing it today. Lisa's not feeling well today, so we are going to talk about how to set boundaries in a relationship, which obviously that would be helpful if I had her here today. But regardless, this is one of the most important lessons that I have personally learned when it comes to relationships, because so often we go into these relationships and we're not clear on the expectations that we have of the other person, whether that be a business relationship, a personal relationship, even with our kids, those relationships. Being able to set boundaries is so important, because now you get to say, these are the expectations I have of you, and then you can make sure to respect those. But if you don't do it, if you assume that they know, which you know what they say when they say don't assume, you make an ass out of you and out of me. And it's so true, especially when it comes to this particular subject, because my best example is my parents. They've been married 50 years. My grandparents, both sets, 60 years. And what I didn't hear from them was how much work it took to really, really be good at being in a relationship, being clear on what those expectations are of one another, being clear on communicating. And the word boundaries wasn't really something that was in my repertoire early in life. It's something that I've learned over time. And knowing how to set boundaries in relationships is a skill. And it's something that I certainly wish I had done earlier, because I wouldn't have bumped my knee as much. I wouldn't have scraped my knee as much as I did. But again, I guess that's maybe the natural process. And hopefully it helps you guys, what we're going to talk about today. Hopefully I can help my kiddos in the same, because I want them to be able to navigate these relationships as best they can. So there's 3 keys that when it comes to setting your boundaries in your relationships. And the first one is just defining that. So the best example that I would give is early in my marriage, especially when it would come to like going out with the boys, going golfing. I wasn't clear on why that was so important to me, to show up as a good dad, as a good business partner, as a good spouse. And so I would actually hold resentment if I went to go golf and she was mad about it. Or let's say we would get in an argument about it. But once we sat down and said, hey, this is why I want to go do this. This is one of my boundaries, is that I need to go out and be active or spend guy time or whatever that is. Once I put the importance behind what it was for, then she could understand and say, yeah, actually, you're right. That's really important. So we need to find those boundaries. Some other ones might be like in the home. Maybe you need certain alone time, and if you don't tell your partner that, they don't know. So that would be the second thing, is communicating those boundaries, letting them know, because people cannot read your mind. As much as we want them to know that, hey, make sure to respect, my wishes, if you don't communicate what that is, how can they? And it's something that we all at some point have realized, like, I think it's one certain way, but if I don't tell you that, how could you possibly know what is going on in my head? So the first one, define your boundaries. Second one is communicate those boundaries. And the last one is evaluate those boundaries. The reason this is important is we are ever evolving. We change as human beings. We are not static objects in this world. We change. And so maybe a boundary that you set 5 years ago isn't applicable in the world that you have today. And so at least once a year at a minimum, and I would suggest maybe more often, sitting down and saying, hey, this was what I said was important to me. I want to make sure that still works with you, and evaluate it. Maybe that's changed. Maybe you need more time. Maybe you need less time. Maybe your expectations of your partner have changed. And so this is your chance to evaluate and say, I know we talked about this, but that is now since shifted for me. What say you? And that gives them the opportunity to say, nope, that doesn't work for me. We need to discuss it. Or, yep, that works perfectly. Now, typically, that's not how it works. I typically don't nail the first expectation or boundary straight out of the gate because I'm only one person. And when you're talking about a relationship, you're obviously talking about more than one person. And so what you may have may affect their boundaries and vice versa. So that's your chance. And one of the sentences that I wrote in here that I think is really important, setting boundaries is a healthy learned skill that will improve over time. The better you know yourself, the better someone else can know how to interact and love you as well. The biggest mistake I've made personally is assuming that someone knows my boundaries. I want you guys to look at that. Look at it with all your relationships and say, have I been clear? Are my boundaries set? Have I communicated and have I evaluated them to make sure that I'm still being consistent with that? It shouldn't take a lot of time, and it will save you a lot of time, heartache, potential bruises along the way by just setting those boundaries, communicating, and evaluating it. So you guys, I hope you get a lot out of it, and a little bit shorter format today because it's just me and me just talking. I certainly don't want to drag it on, but I want to get that across that this is such an important skill that you can use and learn. So I would love to hear how you guys are setting your own boundaries, how you're communicating that. And if you have a process for it, please hit us up at Let's Go Win 365 on any of the platforms. The other big ask that I have is subscribe to this and share. Anyone that you think would get value from this. It's the biggest thing that we're trying to do today is continue to grow this network because your mindset matters. And we want to make sure that everybody's out there winning. So we'll talk to you next week. Have a great one. Thank you so much for listening. If this content is delivering value to you, please make sure to subscribe, rate, and review us. That helps us build this community, and that is what we are all about. Building this community as big as we can, helping as many people as we can, and deliver as much value as possible. Be sure to head over to letsgowinpodcast.com for information on my coaching courses, and make sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn at Let's Go Win 365. Let's go win and transcend in life.
This is the Let's Go Win podcast with your host, J.M. Ryerson.